welcome if you're new, and welcome back if you've been here before. In the last few episodes, I finished the LS swap on this 1995 GMC Sonoma. I got multiple comments on my transmission crossmember, people wanting me to produce it or give them measurements on how to make it. Anyways, I've decided I'll make a video and we'll go through it. So the reason why I wanted to make my own crossmember was for the style of exhaust. I wanted to keep the runners equal to the same point to give the exhaust a certain tone. It'll sound more like an LS1 car versus a truck setup. So in order to do that, I needed the space on this side to clear the pipe. This is what the original crossmember looked like, minus the piece that I cut off to use for an exhaust hanger. So as you can see, it goes on an angle and it's flat across the bottom. Well, that wasn't going to work. So, goes up, goes over, comes down, over, up, over, down, over. So you can see where it used to mount, but GM put 4 holes here for whatever reason, and it is a perfectly straight line across to the other side. So that's what I used. And I hope it goes without saying that this project will require some basic fabrication skills. So I've taken some time and marked out some close measurements. They might not be perfect, they might require some finessing and adjustments, but it'll get you most of the way there. All of the material used to create this crossmember is 3/16 thick. You could probably get away with 1/8, but I'd rather it be overkill than underkill. So for materials that you'll need is some 3/16 plate, some 1.5" 3/16 square tube, and some 3/16 angle iron. I had 2x3. I don't have a piece of that right now, so you'll just have to pretend that this piece of cardboard is a piece of angle iron. This was my original template that I made to figure out what I wanted. I just kept cutting and playing with it until I found something that I thought would work. So we'll start with the mounting points. The first piece that you'll need is 1.5" by 6.5 inches long. And the way I figured out where the holes go is I just use the old crossmember, line it up, mark them out, and that one's done. And then the other piece you'll need is 4 inches by 3.5 inches. And I did the same thing on the frame. So into these 4 holes, held it up there, marked through these holes, drilled them out, and then we're done. I tried to keep it very simple, with the only angles being 45 degrees. 45 degrees is usually something that's pretty easy to set up on whatever tool you have. I have a horizontal bandsaw, but you could use a chop saw, even an angle grinder, whatever you have. So this being my original template for the crossmember, these measurements should get you very close. So we'll start over here. We have this riser piece, 1.75" long, just cut square. This piece, 12.25 inches long with a 45 on one end, and the 12.25 is the long side. Whenever I do angles, I always work off the long side. The next piece is 7 inches, and see we have opposite 45s, so it's 7 inches on both sides. And then here, 4.25 inches on the long side, 1.25-ish on the bottom. Over here, 8.25 inches long, same thing, opposites, so you'll have to flip your part over when you're making your cut. Here, 145, 10 inches long on the long side, 3.25 inches for this riser, and a little 1-inch piece to make it over. Once all the pieces were cut, I came through with an angle grinder and I chamfered all these edges. That way when you butt them up together, it gives a little crevice, place for the weld to lay. And we can pretend that this is 2 pieces of metal. The way that I kept the crossmember square is I just clamped it straight to my workbench and then came in and tacked it in a few spots and then moved to the next piece and the next piece and the next piece until it resembled a crossmember. And then when I was happy with it, I welded it out. The way that I dealt with the side plates that actually mount it to the frame is I bolted the steel directly to the frame and then put the crossmember up in place and fiddled it around until I was happy with where it sat, and then I tacked it. As you can see, you got to be pretty precise on this side because there's not a lot of room around where those bolts go. And then this one here, it's not mounted in the center. It's actually mounted back a little bit. So put your plates on the frame, put your crossmember up in place, tack it, pull it out, weld it when you're happy. The way I got my distance from the back of the pan is I just used a paint stick. I just kept a paint stick in between there, and that's my distance away. So for the piece of angle iron that the transmission mount actually sits on, here are the measurements. It is a 3/16 2x3 piece of angle iron that is 9 inches long, and the position of this piece of angle iron will dictate your engine angle. So I moved it up and down until I got the engine at 3.5, 4 degrees, and once I was happy with it, I tacked it in place. I brought it back to the bench. I just used a grinder to cut these off flush and then welded it in. Now if you want, you can build some caps to cover these ends here or trim these back. I left these long because at the time I wasn't sure if I was going to use it to hang the exhaust off of or not, but it's not in the way of anything. It doesn't bother me. It can just stay the way it is. Coat it with your favorite paint, put it in, and you're done. So I designed this crossmember for my specific setup. It's a 4.8 with a 4L60. I have the engine pushed back against the firewall as far as I can. So if you have a different setup like small block Chevy with a turbo 350, turbo 400, LS with a 4L80, a manual with either one of those, I can't say this will work or not. So it's up to you if you want to build it and try. And this crossmember may work for other setups. It might just be a matter of moving it this way or that, or having a different plate for your mount. So feel free to modify my design and use it for whatever your setup is. So with this video, you should be able to copy my crossmember for your swap. But if you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment. And if you want to go back and watch me build my crossmember, you can see a bit of it in the part 2 of LS swapping this truck. So that's it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like and even possibly subscribing to the channel. Thank you. We'll see you in the next one.